Almost walked in the podium. Don't worry about it. Anyway. If you're a fan of tire shredding horsepower wrapped up in American sheet metal, you have probably heard the letters SRT whispered with reverence. For over 2 decades, Dodge's street and racing technology division and its earlier iterations have churned out some of the wildest, most unapologetic performance machines on the planet. We are talking about the same lunatics who gave us the Viper, the Neon SRT-4, yeah, and eventually a whole lineup of supercharged 700 plus horsepower Hellcat-powered madness. But how did we get here? Where did SRT come from? And why is it such a big deal in Mopar lore? Today, we are blasting through the history of SRT, from its scrappy early days in secret performance skunkworks to the modern era of monstrous horsepower. If you love big motors, bigger attitude, and a dash of anarchy, strap in. This is the SRT story. And that story really begins in the late 1980s. Dodge, under Chrysler Corporation, wanted to build a show-stopping halo car that could rival the raw energy of European exotics. Enter Team Viper, a group of engineers tasked with creating what would become the Dodge Viper. Officially unveiled as a concept in 1989 at the North American International Auto Show, the Viper promised a formula reminiscent of the Shelby Cobra, a big honkin' V10 engine in a lightweight, bare-bones roadster. By 1992, production began, and the Viper was instantly hailed as an American performance icon. Team Viper's success showed Chrysler that a dedicated performance team could yield impressive results. And while SRT wouldn't become a formal badge for a few more years, yes, the Viper was not an SRT, the seeds were planted right there. Specialized engineers, boundary-pushing designs, and of course, the raw desire to create vehicles that made no apologies for being a handful. By the mid-90s, Dodge was flexing its performance chops with the Viper GTS Coupe, capturing Le Mans GT2 victories in racing trim. The brand was forging a reputation for insane power, but it was still somewhat scattered, with no unifying name for these in-house speed merchants just yet. And so, in the early 2000s, Chrysler began consolidating its performance skunkworks under one umbrella called PVO. This stands for Performance Vehicle Operations. Officially formed around 2002, PVO was effectively the next iteration of Team Viper, plus other performance-minded subgroups within Dodge and Chrysler. This division got busy turning everyday cars into asphalt-scorching monsters, applying the Viper method of more horsepower, stiffer suspension, stiffer chassis, and aggressive styling to everything from mid-size sedans to small compact cars. During this era, PVO laid the groundwork for what would soon become SRT. They tested prototypes, developed new powertrains, and toyed with the idea of building a performance sub-brand that could sit right alongside the likes of Ford's SVT, Special Vehicle Team, or GM's performance arms, think like Corvette Engineering and the guys who built the F-body Camaro and Trans Am. So, by 2004, Chrysler decided, PVO kind of sucks, doesn't sound that cool, let's call it SRT, Street and Racing Technology. The name was new, but the mission stayed consistent. Inject extreme performance into Dodge, Chrysler, and yes, eventually Jeep vehicles. Now, in typical Mopar fashion, they didn't tiptoe around the horsepower question. Instead, they hammered it home with a sledgehammer. SRT's formula: 1, 2, 3, 4. Bigger, better engines. Where can you fit a V8? Let's put it there. Turbos? Sure. Superchargers? Why not? Aggressive aesthetics. Hood scoops, vents, spoilers, flared fenders, big wheels. You know you're looking at an SRT from a mile away. Upgraded suspension and brakes, of course. Bilstein dampers, stiffer springs, Brembo brakes. SRT cars had to handle, kinda, and stop as well as they went in a straight line, or at least try to. Some do, some don't. We'll get to it. Unique interiors, sports seats, special gauges, SRT badging. They're not top luxury. These are not luxury cars, but they're distinct enough to remind you that you are in something special. So let's talk about their early hits. We get the Viper SRT-10. When SRT debuted, the Viper was already the big dog. Rebranded from the Dodge Viper to the Viper SRT-10, it featured an 8.3-liter, oh my god, V10 pumping out about 500 horsepower. With no electronic nannies, it was as raw as ever, continuing the Viper's legacy of scaring even seasoned drivers. It was the perfect halo car for SRT. It was a statement piece that said, "We build muscle cars that demand respect." Then, on the other end of the spectrum, was the Neon SRT-4. Produced from 03 to 05, it was a humble economy car turned into a turbocharged rocket. It became a cult favorite and one of the most viewed videos on our YouTube channel. The 2.4-liter inline-4, boosted by a turbo, made around 230 horsepower, bone stock, and could embarrass unsuspecting New Edge Mustangs of the time in a straight line. While yes, it was still a Neon at heart, practical but not exactly luxurious, enthusiasts loved its mod potential and its bargain price tag. The SRT-4 showed that SRT was willing to take risks, tapping into the growing tuner scene in the early 2000s alongside the likes of the WRX, the Evo, and the Civic Type R overseas. Listen, just give them the credit, all right? Then, the lineup expanded. Between 2005 and 2010, SRT broadened its reach across the Chrysler and Dodge lineup, starting with an oddball, the Chrysler Crossfire SRT-6. A supercharged V6 borrowed from Mercedes since Daimler owned Chrysler at that time, gave the sleek, maybe, depending on your perception, Crossfire some serious punch. The Charger SRT-8, reviving the Charger name as a four-door muscle car, was already a big move, but SRT turned it up a notch with the 6.1-liter Hemi V8. It became the go-to performance sedan for Mopar fans who wanted practicality and big power, and informed a lot of SRT's future. We'll get to that. Now, the 300C SRT-8 was the brand's upscale sedan, but SRT turned it into a sleeper with the same 6.1-liter Hemi. It looked like a luxurious cruiser, but had enough get up and go to outrun many sports cars. The Magnum SRT-8, one of the coolest cars they ever made, they did make a high-performance station wagon. The 6.1-liter Hemi in a long roof body meant you could haul groceries and haul ass at the same time. And the Grand Cherokee SRT-8, I owned one of these for like a week. They're really, really cool cars. Jeep joined the party at this point with a 6.1-liter Hemi under the hood, turning an SUV into a high-riding hot rod. It's no rock crawler in SRT form, but it ate up the pavement like no other, and again informed later design decisions for SRT. Now, these vehicles wore SRT-6 or SRT-8 badges indicating the engine type, 6 for the supercharged V6 in the Crossfire, 8 for that big ol' Hemi V8 in the others. Each followed the SRT blueprint: big motor, stiff suspension, brash looks, and a cabin with enough visual cues to remind you that you are in a muscle car. Then, we are moving on to the Hellcat era. If the Viper and the 6.1 Hemi cars were not wild enough, SRT had something else cooking up. Around 2015, they launched the Hellcat versions of the Charger and the Challenger. The Challenger and Charger SRT were armed with a 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi, making a bonkers 707 horsepower, eventually going to 717, then 797, and then so on. Dodge just keeps turning it up. The Hellcat variants reignited the muscle car wars in a major way. Suddenly, a factory Dodge was outrunning exotics in the quarter mile. The Hellcats were unapologetically large, heavy, loud, and perfectly captured the brand's rebellious spirit. SRT took advantage of every marketing angle possible. They had little Hellcat logos. They had hollow headlights for better airflow. They had the red key, full power, and the black key, less power. Multiple drive modes, of course, so you could drive it in the rain, you could drive it in the dry, you could go as fast as you wanted to go. Then they turned it up. If you weren't satisfied with 707 horsepower, Dodge introduced the limited run Challenger SRT Demon in 2018 with 840 horsepower on race fuel. It came with a trans brake, it came with drag radials from the factory, and it could even pull a wheelie if launched correctly. Later on, the Challenger SRT Red Eye arrived, bridging the gap between Hellcat and Demon with 797 horsepower. Essentially, SRT kept finding ways to squeeze more power out of that supercharged 6.2 block, pushing the envelope of what is street legal and fulfilling every Mopar nut's fantasy. In the corporate shuffle of the 2010s, there were a lot of changes at Chrysler. There were mergers, there were acquisitions, there were name changes. In 2014, Chrysler Group became part of Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, FCA. While SRT remained a performance-focused brand, the SRT brand got integrated more deeply into Dodge itself. By 2021, FCA merged with PSA Group to form Stellantis. At some point, corporate decided to phase out SRT as a standalone division, folding its engineers and its resources under the broader global Stellantis umbrella. Now, this of course did not mean SRT vehicles vanished. Far from it. Dodge kept producing Hellcats, Scat Packs, although questionable if they're an SRT, right? But the dedicated SRT team officially was said to be disbanded, with the individuals and expertise simply reassigned to relevant performance projects across the Stellantis umbrella. Now, the short version of all that corporate jargon: SRT is still a thing. We keep seeing new SRT badge cars, but it's not exactly the separate entity it once was. Practically speaking, the passion and engineering remain alive, even if the team got broken up a little bit and the corporate structure got more complex. Now, not just Dodge got to play in the SRT sandbox. While it is the brand we most associate with SRT, the street and racing technology label has also graced Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram vehicles over the years. And in my opinion, these are some of the coolest ones. We had, as we talked about, the Chrysler 300 SRT, sold in the US until around 2010 and continued in some international markets, big Hemi power in a tuxedo-like shell. The Grand Cherokee SRT moved from the 6.1-liter Hemi to the 6.4, eventually overshadowed by the absurd Trackhawk, a Hellcat-powered Jeep with 707 horsepower. If you've got one of these, we got a wheel fitment video up on it. The Ram SRT-10, remember the mid-2000s? Dodge took the Viper V10, they put it in a Ram pickup. They said "F you Ford Lightning" and created the Ram SRT-10. It was wildly impractical and set a top speed record for production pickup trucks. That is peak SRT madness. Now, despite the name street and racing technology, SRT's factory-backed motorsport involvement has been sporadic at best. The most notable effort was in sports car racing with the Viper GT SR competing in Le Mans, ALMS, and other endurance racing series. Now, SRT also provided performance parts for grassroots racers, but you will not find a dedicated SRT Cup the way you would from other manufacturers. Nonetheless, the Viper's success on track, particularly in GT classes, cemented SRT's reputation as more than just a drag strip star. They could turn left and even sometimes right with serious credibility, thanks to the Viper's racing pedigree. Meanwhile, many SRT owners do take their vehicles to the drag strip and the road course, upholding the spirit of street and racing in that grassroots sense. So, we talked about kind of the recent Stellantis merger, and in recent years, Dodge has teased electrification and alternative powertrains, acknowledging that emissions and fuel economy standards are a part of our reality and getting tougher. The big 6.2-liter supercharged Hellcat engine, while beloved, is not exactly the poster child for efficiency. With the era of internal combustion possibly drawing to a close, the question becomes, what the heck is going to happen to SRT? Now, Dodge has already unveiled concepts for electric muscle cars, like the Charger Daytona SRT concept, signaling that the SRT name could live on in high-performance EVs. Yuck, honestly.
Wait for it. Here it comes. Almost there!
The promising muscle car soul with electric motors, and while some purists, might mourn the loss of the V8, it's possible SRT engineers will continue to find ways to make Mopar vehicles insane. Instead of superchargers, we might use multi-motor setups with monstrous torque. The day might come where an SRT badge on an electric Dodge means 1,000+ horsepower and a 0 to 60 time measured in blink of an eye increments. For now, the Hellcat era is winding down, with Dodge announcing that 2023 would be the last model year for the current Charger and Challenger Hellcats, and they keep kind of extending this out a little bit, and honestly it's kind of hard to say unless you're in the market for one. Last call editions were rolled out, including extra powerful variants and nostalgic paint schemes, but then they keep making the SRT Durango, which is supposed to be a 1-year thing, so it's kind of hard to say when it's actually going to end. That said, it might be the end of SRT and a start to a new era powered by electrons instead of octane. SRT's legacy, overall, is defined by extremes. From the raw, no traction control Viper to the family-friendly Charger SRT-8, from the front-wheel drive Neon SRT-4 to the supercharged track monster that is the Demon. SRT has always been about maximizing performance with a certain rebellious swagger. It's the antithesis of politically correct automaking. It's unabashed horsepower, it's big engines, it's the smell of burnt rubber. And in a world where even sports cars are being toned down for mass appeal, SRT raised their middle finger to that and kept waving the red, white, and blue hot rod flag. It's not subtle, it's not refined, it's a loud statement. We're here to go fast, we're here to look menacing doing it. We're not here for you, we're here for you, the enthusiast. That's why the brand has a cult following among enthusiasts. Now, Rapid fire round, because SRT did some weird, funky stuff over the years. The Viper actually had ties to Lamborghini during the Viper's initial development in the late 1980s. Chrysler owned, at the time, Lamborghini, who helped design elements of the V10 engine. This cross-continental engineering was a peek into Chrysler's global presence that would eventually continue with like the Stellantis merger. Now, the Demon was the first factory muscle car to break into an 8-second quarter mile, the first production car in general. It was the first one to break into the 9s, and it was the first one to break into the 8s with like some certain factory modifications. Now, those are kind of questionable. There's been a lot of controversy around this, but that's what the paper says, so that's what we're gonna say. Now, the Demon had a front driver's seat. That's it. The passenger and back seats cost you $1 when you bought the car, pushing the drag strip special narrative. It was SRT's marketing at its cheeky finest. Many SRT vehicles share certain design motifs: big scoops, wide body kits, and of course the nostril grills for extra airflow. The brand's parted lips front fascia, I can never say it, fascia, is almost a calling card. Now, if you zoom all the way out here, SRT's not just another in-house performance department. It's become a cultural statement about American muscle in a way that Chevy and Ford have never really been able to achieve. It's a refusal to bow to practicality, from the Viper's mania forged in the era of big Hemis and superchargers, and possibly heading into an electrified future. SRT continues to stand for pushing limits. Even if the corporate entity morphs or merges, that DNA of outrageous power, track-inspired engineering, and unapologetic design language is likely to stay embedded in Dodge's bloodstream for years to come. So, if you ever see an SRT badge on a Charger, Challenger, Jeep, Chrysler, whatever, or some futuristic EV, just know you are looking at a piece of modern-day Mopar history that's about going faster, louder, and bolder than you probably need to. And that, my friends, is the spirit of SRT. And if you've got an SRT, guess what? We're a wheel company, right? You can buy wheels for it on our website. That way we can keep making YouTube videos. You can buy drag wheels, you can buy street wheels. Got a whole bunch. Chargers and Challengers look good on pretty much everything. We got fitment guides on them. So, if you're looking for new wheels and tires, you know where to get them. If you like the video, hit the like button, drop a comment, hit subscribe. If you want to see us cover another automaker or anything else, or if you hate the video, drop a comment anyway, and I'll see you in the next one.